documented, because as you would well be aware, materiality is a judgmental area. And in determining what is material information for a particular relevant risks and opportunity for sustainability, that may require applying certain amount of judgment. So the answer is generally yes, that you would want to document the criteria, the thought process, the assessment that a particular company has taken place, has gone through to identify or to determine what is considered to be material. It is something that is judgmental, and with all judgments when it comes to accounting, for example, those judgments need to be documented, so because it highlights the thought process, especially for those sort of information that might be considered to be close call, and perhaps especially those type of information that do not feature in your sustainability report under ISSB because they're considered to be immaterial by the company. Those are the very elements that need to be documented as to why a company considers it to be immaterial when it comes to the investor's decision-making process. Another question we usually get is, can companies use GRI standards to identify material information to disclose? And the reason we're getting GRI as a question is because, as I mentioned earlier, GRI is the most predominantly applied sustainability reporting framework, both globally and locally. And therefore, for those entities that are currently applying GRI already as part of their sustainability reporting, they would want to know how do they transition into ISSB, for example, and can they actually leverage GRI sort of considerations when it came to materiality or material topics, etc. Can they leverage that when adopting IFRS? So the answer is yes, and this goes back to the intention of ISSB, which was not to reinvent the wheel, to form that global baseline of reporting standards, and to adopt and consolidate where possible, existing frameworks and existing sustainability reporting standards in the overall application of ISSB and applying those standards. So yes, certain considerations with certain restrictions. Companies can consider GRI as a source for identifying potential disclosures when applying ISSB. Next slide. So having covered, the steps to take for companies when adopting, ISSB, and then once you have identified those, sustainability risks and opportunities and the material information about those, the other, common question and common point that is raised by practitioners is, okay, so where does this all go? How does the presentation look like? So one key overarching principle is the information needs to be disclosed, as I mentioned, as part of general purpose financial reporting, and is to be prepared at least annually. ISSB does not specify or mandate any specific location for these disclosures. So it is discretionary in terms of how the companies want to disclose. Having said that, they have set out certain, I would say, guiding principles. One, it needs to be connected. It needs to, if it's separately being reported apart from, let's say, one set of integrated report or annual report where financial reporting and financial and sustainability reporting is being disclosed. If that's the case, that would be, there would be requirements to be able to cross-reference those if they're being done separately. If it's actually converged into one single report, well, then that, is also important in terms of cross-referencing within that report as well as to how certain sustainability reporting information is linked to financial reporting and vice versa as well. So it could be in one document, in one annual report, in one integrated report. It could also be in separate reports, separate sustainability report, separate financial report. The location is not something that ISSB has mandated, but the principles of connectivity, cross-referencing are the guiding principles where companies need to consider when they're disclosing information. And it's worth noting as well that it would also, follow the regulatory requirements when certain regulators and regulatory bodies have adopted these standards. the regulators may themselves mandate a particular location or particular way in terms of disclosing. That is something that companies may want to would have to consider when determining the overall presentation. So how will this presentation, or how can this presentation look like? Well, I mentioned integrated reporting. That's one way of having one report that covers sustainability-related risks and opportunities, as well as financial statements, financial reporting aspects, and and that report can be coherent. The narrative can be in sync. There could be cross-referencing within that report into certain sections and pages where that information can be linked, and investors who are reading those reports can draw the linkages together. That is one way to do it, and we know certain companies globally and in Saudi Arabia are adopting integrated, not necessarily ISSB for now, but integrated reporting from sustainability reporting perspective and financial reporting perspective is already in play. But in terms of ISSB, another if you're doing it separately or within the integrated report, what is the ways to do it? One illustration is by content area. Those 4 content areas that are inherited from TCFD, governance strategy, risk management, metrics and targets. That could be a way to organize your reporting. And for each of those 4 pillars, you cover the sustainability related risks. So for example, if you're covering governance can cover the processes and controls in place for all the sustainability related risks and opportunities that a company is exposed to. Similarly, what is the strategy for all the related risks and opportunities? It covers under each of these banners. Another way of doing it would be by topic. So for example, related risks topic, climate, water, biodiversity, these are, very, very topical topics. And for each topic, you would then go cover what is the governance around this topic, what is the strategy around this topic, risk management processes that are overarching and overseeing that particular topic in terms of risks as well, and what are the metrics and targets for each of those topics individually. It's different ways of disclosing information in same information, but disclosing in a different manner in terms of presentation style, in terms of organization of that information. What a company may find, more coherent, it is up to them to decide. But these are certain ways, the information can be disclosed. So another question that we get quite often is, can companies continue to publish separate sustainability report to meet the needs of wider stakeholders? Well, the answer is yes. It could be the case where ISSB, because it's investor focused, it may not cater to all other stakeholders that, some other standards might be catering towards, and in which case, it may be better to have separate sustainability reports under ISSB and perhaps, other reporting frameworks as well, if a company deems it important to be addressing multiple stakeholders, and ISSB themselves will not be, sufficient enough to cater to other stakeholders, for example. Having said that, it's worth noting as well that, ISSB has launched a GRI symposium lab as well. So the idea is that, ISSB having launched these standards, they're actively involved in supporting the adoption of these standards. And these symposium labs are designed so that there's a technical working group in place that can, focus on how companies can transition from GRI, for example, to ISSB, and provide any guidance when through that transition. Next slide, please. So worth explaining and worth, showing a bit of example on connectivity and connected information. So, ISSB wants that connectivity between financial and non-financial information. And in today's dynamic world, we know that it's all interconnected anyways. So for example, if you look at climate related risks can impact, from a financial reporting perspective, asset impairment. So for example, if there's a power plant operating in a location which has just experienced flooding, that power plant will be impacted, and the cash flows generating from that power plant would need to feature in the modeling and in the impairment modeling, impairment exercise that management would need to do from an IAS 36 accounting perspective. and basically determine whether there's any impairment that needs to be recognized. That's a climate-related impact that can impact the financial statements. Similarly, a climate-related risk can impact, costs of mitigation. So if there is expectation that a flood might be expected in a year or two's time, or based on certain research, then the companies would need to consider, okay, so how do they mitigate, how do they position themselves well to be able to withstand that flood, and what are the costs involved in mitigation of that climate-related event. That is something that would be very, sustainability-related information, but something that has a financial quantified impact as well, which would need to be disclosed as part of, ISSB's sustainability reporting. Similarly, water, nature, human rights are also other sustainability-related topics which are also interconnected. And then companies would need to consider, what could be the impact of any revenue reduction as a result of any disruption that might happen. Are there any fines that might be imposed by regulators or any other body, authority around any violation of, let's say, human rights or any other law that might be prevalent or might be, related to sustainability. Well, if there are going to be fines associated with certain violations, then that also has a financial implication, and that needs to be, well disclosed as part of your sustainability reporting under ISSB. So just certain things to just bear in mind. Finally, having covered, certain examples of connectivities, how to go about ISSB sustainability reporting at a core content level, it's worth highlighting what are certain transition reliefs, because these standards have been issued and they're effective from 1 January 2024 if a particular jurisdiction has endorsed it and has made it mandatory. At this point in time, we know that these standards are not mandatory here in Saudi Arabia. But even having said that, it's worth thinking about transition reliefs as well, even when the first mandatory adoption happens. So, for example, if a particular jurisdiction had made these standards effective from 1 January 2024, that would essentially be your first year of reporting, in which case when, for a year ending December 2024, the first set of reports will be issued in 2025. And in that first set of reporting, what are certain transition reliefs that ISSB has provided? So in the first year of reporting, only climate-related information is okay to be disclosed. So you would recall when I was mentioning S1, Sustainability Reporting, General Reporting Standard, the requirement is to disclose information on all sustainability-related risks and opportunities. So one relief that ISSB has provided is that in that first year, the company can focus only on climate only and not cover other sustainability-related risks that could follow in the subsequent years. In the first year reporting, Scope 3 greenhouse gas emissions, so these are the most complicated, the most judgmental emission information that is disclosed by companies. Indirect emissions, essentially around greenhouse gas emissions, very difficult to quantify and very, very difficult to ascertain the reliability of it as well. That is excluded from first year reporting, so that provides certain transition reliefs as well for companies where greenhouse gas emission is going to be a material topic for them to disclose. Reporting can also be done after the issuance of financial statements. So as you know, the requirement is to report it at the same time, but in the first year reporting, transition relief has been provided. And for, and accountants and finance professionals are going to be glad to hear that in the first year reporting as well, comparatives are not required as well when reporting information, so it could only be for the current year reporting. These transition reliefs broadly in subsequent years taper off. So in the second year of reporting, the climate only relief expires and the requirement is to disclose information around all sustainability related risks and opportunity. In the second year of reporting needs to be at the same time as the financial statements, and comparatives do need to be disclosed for climate related information only. And as you can guess, this relief also tapers off in the third year reporting, which would be for the year ending 2026, for reporting to be published in 2027. And these initial reliefs all will be expiring and reporting would be required on all topics. One important point to highlight is these transition reliefs begin from the first year of adoption. So even if a particular jurisdiction, for example, Saudi Arabia, adopts these standards in subsequent years, the clock starts from the year of first effective date and first year of adoption, essentially. Okay, so I think this concludes the session on introducing ISSP. We will now take a 15 minutes break for coffee, to stretch, to also pray Maghrib as well. So please.
حديثنا عن حيث توقفنا، وهذا سيكون عن الجلسة الثالثة، أن نتحدث عن المحتويات التي يجب أن نقدمها من ناحية الحوكمة والاستراتيجية، إدارة المخاطر ومصفوفة المستهدفات، حتى نبني الإطار للمعايير الدولية الاستدامة. شكرا جزيلا، نراكم بعد ربع ساعة إن شاء الله.